thanks for coming by. I'm Will Sullivan, one of the principals at CM&F Group, and we're talking about PAs in the entrepreneurial realm. And we're going to make this pretty quick and easy. We'll do quick intros for everybody, and then we'll just get into 3 main questions, which will be really open forum for the panelists. And then we should have about 15 minutes of open Q&A. So the goal is really to just give you as much fodder for you to think about, mull over your opportunity as you grow. CM&F Group is malpractice focused, so malpractice insurance. But we have a ton of sister companies that do different insurance types, from travel insurance to opening up a business, getting business owner policy, cyber insurance, all types of different things. Our focus here, we've done other kind of discussions on risk management and case studies like that for lawsuits, but what we're seeing in our business, working with PAs for decades now, being a partner with the AAPA for years, is just this entrepreneurial wave in healthcare, and we've seen it in different clinician classes, and we're seeing PAs really start to take the lead on this, and we felt, from a risk standpoint, we really need more leaders highlighted about what you're doing and how you can get out there, and we think this is going to be really advantageous for you to do. So that's really it, and we'll get going. So why don't we just start from the top? Chris. So we got Chris, JC, and Phoebe. So go ahead, Chris.
Hi everyone, my name is Chris Cannell. I've been a PA for about 22 years. Got my doctorate from University of Lynchburg in 2022, working in clinical practice in mostly emergency medicine, but I've worked in orthopedics, still actively work in orthopedics, and then worked in critical care, hospital medicine, which I'm still practicing as well, and a little bit of primary care and urgent care. My entrepreneurship that I do is in the medical legal consulting space, doing some expert witness work, and doing some medical professional legal consulting work, which I really enjoy. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But that's what I've been doing for the last 22 years, and definitely really enjoy the work that I do. Definitely think it's a space that PAs would definitely get into.
I'm Tracy Bateman. I am a clinician career coach. I help clinicians with negotiation, overcoming burnout, going part-time. I am a formerly burned out surgery PA who had to sort of wander through the weeds of recovering from my burnout, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and how that inspired me to help other people not feel so lost and alone when they're feeling burned out and wondering if it's you or if it's medicine. It's medicine. It's not you. I host a podcast called The PA is In, where I have guests share about their experiences. If you're looking to find someone who's doing a unique specialty or has done a pivot and you're wondering if you can see it there, we have over 300 episodes of a combination of me and incredible guests who are running businesses, writing books, doing some of the things we're going to talk about today, but also paving their own way through clinical practice in a way that doesn't look like we were told. So I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for coming.
Sorry, not the best with technology. My name is Phoebe Gutierrez. I am not a clinician or a PA, but I am an entrepreneur. So my background is all in healthcare compliance, regulatory, and operations, and I worked at, both as an active regulator and in the startup space, and I co-founded CM&F, which is a clinician marketplace that aims to really help clinicians start their own businesses, take control back of, their independence clinically. And my entrepreneurial journey really came, like Tracy said, you just kind of get burned out, you want to take a little bit more control over your life. And the only people who understand the language that I speak are clinicians, because they're the only ones who care about compliance. And so really I like to partner with physicians and physician assistants on building their own companies and doing it in a safe way, a compliant way, but also a way that they feel supported.
All right, so let's kick it off. So first question, what inspired you to pursue an entrepreneurial path, and how did you identify
Yeah, so I am filled with a bunch of family members who are in sales and business, so I'm the only clinician in the family. And so I was inspired by that, as I always wanted to do more than just be a clinician. It never felt to me that it was enough. And I had this entrepreneur vibe. Early on in my career, I did a little bit of PA job placement that didn't really work out, which is what happens with a lot of businesses. And I spent a couple of years still trying to figure out sort of what I wanted to do, what inspired me, what I was passionate about. And unfortunately, I was part of a malpractice case, which I came out on top of, and that sort of inspired me. Like it was really a terrible experience, but like it also like inspired me to say, hey, I want to do better. I want to improve what I'm doing as a clinician. I want to improve my students that I mentor. I want to improve my colleagues, and I want to get more into this space. And so, certainly as part of why I went to get my doctorate degree, I was also very burned out, specifically during the COVID time. And I was, you get to a point in your career as a PA, you're like, what's next? What can I do more? I'm sort of doing everything a physician does. I'm getting paid, nowhere near what they're getting paid. And, I got to do something more. And so really this sort of space has really sort of been great for me. Like I really have networked, spoke to a lot of people. I've done a lot of self-study, worked with a ton of attorneys. And the work is great. And when I worked with the attorney team that represented me in my malpractice suit, they basically, hired me to be an expert. They thought, they told me I had skills I didn't even know I had. And if you've been a PA for a long enough time, you are qualified in this space. You just got to be able to, be tough. Like you have to be able to sit in front of a bunch of attorneys that are, hammering you with questions. And you have to be professional, and you have to, be moral, and you have to stand up for sort of what you believe is the standard of care in the case. And as time has gone on, I really have found that has been entirely helpful for my career, my colleagues' career. And so I identified my passion in healthcare law space. It's really a niche. Like there's not a lot of PAs are doing this, and I do believe that we, especially as we're sort of improving our care, we're going to be more autonomous now. Where we have these compact agreements. PAs are starting businesses everywhere. We need to have a QA for us, and we need to police ourselves and show that we deliver high quality of care. So that's my passion. That's the niche that I believe in that I can really help in.
Yeah, amazing. And I think it goes to like just the whole concept and branding of PAs go beyond what does that kind of mean for everybody. And I think just hearing what Chris has, kind of going through crucible and then coming out of it inspired to do something new is really a good manifestation of that. So Tracy, what do you think?
So does anyone in the room have a daughter who says the exact thing that you don't want to hear? At any moment? Yeah. Okay, so I have one of those. She's 6. Her name is Ray Ray. But when she was 2, and potentially even less filtered than she is now, which is sort of hard to think about, I was working full-time as a urology PA. I was working 24 hours during the day, overnight, and early in the morning she came in her room and asked me to hold her. And I had my laptop on my lap, and I was on the phone with the transfer center, and I had a patient with 4 days who was unstable, who needed source control. I needed to get him to the hospital. Super important, super urgent. And she asked me to hold her. She had her little purple owl floaty pajamas on, and I said no, because my lap was occupied, because I was working. She looked me straight in the eye, because toddlers are not known for their filtering of their thoughts, and she has 4 older brothers who taught her some choice language. She looked me in the eye and she said, "Mama, you're stupid." First of all, rude. Second of all, she was right. And I realized that if you asked me, I would have told you that my family mattered more than what I did at work. But if you looked at my schedule and the way that I was showing up in the world, it would have been at complete opposition with that. I was showing up at work. If you needed something done, I was the person that was going to get it done. I was incredible at what I was doing. The work was amazing. The team was great. However, I was accidentally volunteering 20 hours a week to an organization that would have stepped over my stillborn body to fill my job. So I thought about quitting that day, but I didn't want to quit in a blaze of sort of exhausted post-call, not making very clear decisions. So I resigned 7 days later, and everyone kept asking me, number one, how did you value yourself enough to know that it was time to walk away? Because you're being treated essentially the way that everyone else in this organization is being treated. And then, how could you afford to do this? And also, how did you know that you were in the right and that the healthcare organization was in the wrong? They were asking you to do something that was compromising yourself and the safety of your patients. So I realized that there weren't great resources for people feeling this burnout and feeling like, what is the path for me if it doesn't look like the way I thought my career would? So I started it. The podcast was born from that. I feel like as an entrepreneur, the show and I and the services that we offer have really grown up together and figured out how to serve PAs and clinicians in this space. Because when you're looking around in a meeting and you're saying, this doesn't seem safe or reasonable for us or for the patients that we're taking care of, when everyone else is remaining silent, you feel like it's you. You feel like you are the one who has unreasonable expectations, and it's time to start realizing that no, it needs to be safe for us, it needs to be safe for patients, and so boundaries and negotiation and financials, all of those things are things I talk about because it was the advice I needed when I burned out and it didn't exist at the time.
I could just add to that if you don't mind.
That's all.
So, my burnout has been a while now, and I just want to add that my spouse is also a PA, and we've nothing's more important than family. I would absolutely agree with Tracy. So that's been that's actually the truly most important thing that has inspired me because I wanted a side hustle, an entrepreneurship that gave me flexibility and allowed me to spend more time with my family, which is the most important thing to me. To be there for my kids because I don't get this time back. And to me, that's the most important thing. So, like Tracy, that's what inspired me to be able to be more, do more, and be my own boss more.
Yeah, Phoebe, one thing to add is just, what you do from a work standpoint, there's a lot of questions about work-life balance, and it's pretty impactful. But, if you start a business that's based off of like a moral foundation, like fundamentals, something good and necessary in the world, that's the legacy you give out. And, but you have to kind of temper that with the legacy that you leave for family and loved ones. That's really like the primary, when you're sick and old, like that's who remembers you. So, you hope the same for people in business and make a good impact. But at the end of the day, if you're an entrepreneur, you need to lead, friends, family, kind of see that too. And I think it's good as an exhibition of that. Phoebe, what do you?
Yeah, so my path is a little bit different, just, again, not a clinician, but I think, very similar to both, you go to school and you get a job and you have a career and you think if you keep promoting, you get more money, you're going to just find happiness, and happiness is just going to be there. And I think I realized really early on as I kept promoting and making more money and making more money than I would have ever imagined, it did not bring me happiness, at all. It was actually quite the opposite. I was completely burned out, working so many hours, working for all these companies at an executive level, but feeling very unheard, unappreciated. I had no autonomy over my own choices. And so part of, my thing is I started to kind of pinpoint the pieces of my roles that I liked. I like working with people, I like helping people, I like educating. I like sharing all the mistakes that I made, and those are things that a lot of companies just don't want you to do because you're giving away information you're not supposed to give, and you're telling people they're real, you're being very transparent, and unfortunately in business, they don't want people like me. And so part of it was, I think I had kind of, like Tracy again, like a very similar, pivotal moment where it was, you keep, you're in these roles and you're doing these things and you know the right, you feel something in your gut is the right thing to do, and then you have corporations or whomever telling you you can't do that, and very similar, I resigned from, my W-2 world, and I went all in on, starting really small, researching, thinking about how I wanted to help. Mainly I started with physicians, and then moved into kind of supporting other clinicians. And really it was talking to people and giving away things for free that inadvertently built my company and is now completely replaced the income. And not a day goes by that it feels like work. And I think to me, like that was the big thing. It's like, what can I do in this space that is needed, that people want? And actually I'm gonna kind of make money, but even if I don't make money, at the end of the day, I'm gonna be able to go to bed and still feel like my heart feels full. And so for me, like that was the big thing for me. It's like, it didn't matter what company I worked for because they were gonna let me be me. And probably throughout this, you guys will get to learn a little bit more about me. But for me, I have to be me. I'm unfiltered, I'm direct, I want to help, I want to speak my mind, I want to brainstorm, I want to collaborate, and I want to support as many people as I possibly can. And like for me, I had to carve my own path that way.
Yeah, so we'll kind of get to that next question. We'll make this kind of like a short one because I think it's like a really good hit because we want to make sure we get to kind of future-facing opportunities for everybody in the crowd here. But what were the biggest challenges you faced, and what advice would you give aspiring PA entrepreneurs? So try to give us like a snapshot of 1-2 quick hits on that.
I think sort of the biggest challenge for me is, how do you just get started? Like, hey, you have this passion, you have this niche you're interested in, but how do you sort of get started? For me, it was, getting a business model and sort of growing with it, being humble, and just learning from your mistakes in the process. So it's just evolving over time and seeking mentorship from people who have done it before you, and just asking advice, ask questions. So that was sort of the biggest process that I've been through, and getting an accountant to give you the right advice, getting the right invoicing software, getting the right organization, knowing when to ask for help with your organization. I'm working full time, and then I'm running this side business, getting a virtual assistant for which I hired. It made my life so much better, and just realizing every step of the way sort of where you might be failing, and what you're good at, and utilizing people who have better skills in other areas as you, and take advantage of that, because your time is valuable. It becomes valuable in your family, it becomes valuable for what you're doing clinically, it becomes valuable for your side hustle. So I think it's just sort of realizing what your passion is, and sort of realizing what you have time for, and just realizing, like, just put your head down and do it. Like, if you have like this energy and you have this desire to do it, just do it, and it will come with time. I promise you. Like, I'm nowhere near where I want to be, but it's been 8 years to be building, and it's getting better week by week.
So I think the biggest challenge, I have two. The first biggest challenge for me is if you build it, they will come. It turns out as an entrepreneur, you have to build it and then tell them about it about 72 times. And then they still won't come, and you have to tell them about it differently on Tuesday instead of Friday. And that has been the hardest thing, sort of figuring out how to message so that people feel seen and heard and served and not sold to, and inspired to take action, and also that it's the time and place for them where your product meets them. That's a lot of ifs. I sort of thought, I'm going to start a podcast to serve PAs, and every practicing PA is going to know about it by tomorrow. That is not how it works. We are 5 years in, and still, at this conference, 7 people have walked up to me and said, I just found you. And I'm like, where have you been? Because I have been here trying all the things so that you can find me, right? So persistence in just trying new things. If what you're doing isn't working, try something else. It's not that you messed up. It's just part of the course. And then the second thing is systems. I still, every day, feel like I have no idea what I'm doing as an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurship is challenging in a way that clinical medicine is not. It's just different. There's not the roadmap. And you need systems. If you're doing something more than once, you need a template for it, just like a note. So you're already doing this in clinical practice. When you see a certain type of patient, you have a preset, you have an order set, you have a note. Do that in business because you don't want to waste time on the minutia. You want to be able to have the time and energy to focus on building and having things that are as seamless as possible.
For me, it was a little bit more around just getting over the initial fear and just like jumping in. Like it's scary. Anything new is always scary. And so for me, I think the biggest challenge is I don't have a little tribe around me. I'm very, very niche, my experience. And so, trying to find people that have a similar experience or lived experience, I just couldn't find them. And then also being a woman in technology and healthcare, sometimes it's an uphill battle. So I felt very isolated, kind of alone, and it really wasn't until I found the right mentors and had the right people around me that had done it, where they were like, let's just start today. And I was like, okay, that's all I needed. And so to me, the biggest thing was facing the fear and finding the right support system to kind of hold you accountable and also just hold your hand and let you know that it's going to be okay. You are all very employable people. I'm a very employable person. And at the end of the day, if you have to go back and get a real job, you could always do that. But I would have regrets not, if I didn't jump in last year, I would probably still be hating my life at working for a company and saying that I want to start my company tomorrow. I'm just grateful that I actually took the leap and gave myself a shot.
All right, so this is a big ticket item that I think is really great, and it'll open us up into the Q&A after each of the crew go through. But where do you see the next 3 to 5 years for opportunities? I mean, it's amazing. There's a lot of them. You see a lot of them at CM&F coming through, a lot of different specialties coming through, people, sole proprietors, setting up businesses, a couple PAs setting up, a surgical staffing group, med spa, HRT, functional medicine, you get into the obesity epidemic, there's so much outside of primary care. One thing I think is good to note here is when you talk to the AAPA, 40% of professionals want to be in a leadership position in the PA profession. And then you look at the students, and over 40% of the students want to go into a leadership position. And it's you're at a tipping point. I know we have students in the crowd too, but we're really at a tipping point with the profession here. So I'm super interested where the three of you think 3 to 5 years is. We have Chris doing his stuff on the risk side, but also working full time. Tracy's seeing and talking to all this abundance of people. And if you don't follow the podcast, please do.
Yes, please do.
And then Phoebe's got Single Aim, which is working with PAs and NPs and physicians who want to work with PAs to build businesses nationally. So in all these different niches too. So it's super interesting. So anyway, kick it to you, and give us your quick blurb, and then we'll kick it out to Q&A.
Yeah, I think that you're going to see an explosion into the psychiatric space. I think PAs right now are the hottest profession right now for PAs is the psychiatric space. I think that you add in the telemedicine component, you add in the compact agreements, and I think that we can really fill a niche there. I mean, obviously, just like Will said, I think the wellness space for lifestyle medicine, obesity medicine, looking into the holistic medicine, I think those spaces, but I also think primary care, so I think especially where we need to go, the whole beginnings of the PA profession of primary care, and I think we're going to actually go back there. I think that is the space where even getting away from charging insurance, going in a model where it's a direct pay type of environment. I think you'll see more PAs in that space. And I think you'll see the IV therapy space, the spa space as well. But I also think we're going to see more work as I'm seeing more and more people who are doing academic consulting. I do educational consulting work as well. I think you're going to see more and more people are going to go become independent contractors because we want to be our own bosses. We're tired of it. We're tired of being within healthcare systems, getting those 2% raises every year. I mean, raise your hand if you're sick of that. Right? I mean, we want a little bit more flexibility. And I think I think you're seeing an explosion happen now, and I think that's a good thing.
I think one interesting business model and then we'll kick it to Tracy, but one business model we've seen in our business is a family practice in an area where there weren't a lot of family practices, and the business owners kept getting people coming in and asking for Botox, but they're a family practice. So eventually, they got everybody certified, everybody did training on the side, and they had 8 clinicians, but they just couldn't really make the revenue work long term with the reimbursement that they had. And what they did is they opened up a side piece of the business that was cash-based care, and then all of a sudden they tripled their revenue in 1 year with no expansion of payroll. So when you start thinking about, this team was so excited that they could stay where they are, provide care to a community, but then level set with this entrepreneurial value that they have to get more flexibility and build and maintain what they have in the community. So there's like these different things you start to see click that are super interesting in the market. Tracy?
When I think about entrepreneurship in the next 3 to 5 years for people in this space, I would want you to think about what you're really good at. So it's astonishing to me that I get to teach people about something that is not hard for me. It's not hard for me to look at your job and say you need this kind of boundary and this is how I would enforce it. It's easy for me to look at someone's contract and tell them what I would and wouldn't accept. So the things that come easy to you, the things that people are calling you about off the books, like not as a part of work, that they're like, hey, I know you're the go-to person for this, so my sister's friend wanted to talk to you about that. The things that don't feel challenging to you, that's a unique skill set that you can provide to other people. So I wouldn't even don't worry about what the 3 of us are doing. Build something that works for you, is scalable, and still means that you can be home when your kids get off the bus. Like, that is the single most important thing. Above revenue generation, above systems, above getting over the fear, is knowing that it's going to work for you in your season of life.
So this is a loaded question for me because I get to work with PAs who are all doing so many amazing different things. And so I think the key point is experiment. See what you like, see what you don't like, and don't feel obligated to continue doing the service that you absolutely despise. I work with PAs that are like doing wound care, and they're like, I need it. I just want to work with women. And I'm like, well, then go learn about some hormones. Go find something that you're passionate about, otherwise you're just going to burn out as an entrepreneur. Part of burnout is really trying to find something that you're passionate about so it doesn't seem like work. And so for me, I see PAs as really, over the next 3 to 5 years, stepping up and taking a little bit more charge of their own, careers and leading, really new and innovative spaces in healthcare. NPs are doing it now, and PAs can also do it now. There just hasn't been the support system that's needed to exist around PAs. You Google PA entrepreneurship, you see horror stories, and it does not have to be like that. I see success stories every single day. They're just not as publicly out there. And so for me, it's like I would love to see, not even 3 to 5 years, like the next year, PAs really, banding together and going, let's go figure this out together. You're in Texas and I'm in Florida. Well, you can be there and I can be here, but we're going to support each other and we're going to partner and do this. I would love to see PAs have a lot more community surrounded around them in this entrepreneurial space. I would love to see more, and again, it's all about finding that niche balance. Just because your friend wants to do a med spa doesn't mean it has to be that. You really have to kind of dig deep, figure out the things that you're interested in, and ultimately, with marketing, with networking, with having the right support system around you, you will find success. It's just going to take a little bit of time, a lot of hard work. But from somebody who has built my company up over the last, it's only been 6 months, which is kind of crazy, but over the last 6 months, it's a lot of hours, but it's so validating. And you're going to immediately see a shift from going from your traditional, in the hospital, traditional, healthcare setting to kind of try this new thing that is going to be challenging, but also very validating and fun. The spaces that I see are really big in longevity space. Women's health and men's health is just continuing to expand and grow. And then a lot in pediatrics, and we all care about our kids. And having more PAs that could lead in pediatric space. I think again, it's just creating access to care. You're going to be able to support people that don't actually have care. And then lastly, of course, like having more PAs get into telemedicine. A lot of my work is around the virtual care space, and not too many PAs understand that you too can be licensed in 15 states and get on multiple platforms and be a 1099 contractor, work from home, and completely replace your income. And that's what a lot of people are. They're building up their business, and they have their side gig of telemedicine just until they can support their own thing. So there's lots of options out there. So to me, it's really just having PAs understand those options. And then even if you're Googling and it doesn't say that you could do it, that you're asking the right questions and you're figuring out the workarounds and you're talking to the right people like Chris or me, Tracy. And getting the answers, that you need, and not just taking no for an answer.
All right, so we're going to open up the Q&A. We'll circulate a microphone. Just love to hear questions.
It's not, I don't think it's on. You have to turn it on.
Already got enough hands, so that's good. Go ahead.
Hey everyone, this is Adele McCarthy. I wanted to learn a little bit more about what the compliance issues you face or you've seen as kind of barriers in implementing your entrepreneurial journey.
Sure, I can take that one.
I think that's a Phoebe question.
Yeah.
So I'll kind of kick that there.
Yeah, so for PAs, it's a lot more complex when it comes to setting up their business entities. So there is one big rule that kind of governs how medical groups are formed in the United States. It's called corporate practice of medicine. It's the most confusing doctrine. I'm not going to bore everybody with it, but in certain states, it basically says a PA cannot own their own clinic, and you have to contract with a physician to do it. And it's just really, really complicated. Sometimes it requires that the PA has to practice on site with a physician for at least 6 months. Sometimes there's on-site rules where you have to have different, levels of engagement. None of it is a complete blocker, but it is just an additional barrier that makes it a lot harder. And so what I've seen in my, my experience is a lot of PAs will go, well, I'm in this state, and there's this doctor, and I can't I can't own my own clinic, so I'm just not even going to do it. Like, what's the point? And I said, well, we could find something local. Have we tried cold calling clinics around to find you the right partner? I can see if we have somebody in our network. You could plug into, kind of like a clinic system, some physicians are starting to build up. That's one main element of just like the compliance complexity. And again, to me, it's not too complicated to figure out, but the way that it is set up in today's world is you'll go to a law firm and they'll want to charge you 10 grand to do it. Or you'll go to a company and say that we have the full scale solution and it'll cost you $15,000. When in reality, it's something you could figure out on your own if you have the right partners and the right team.
Yeah, there is one thing I'll add, and Anthony, if we have another question, we can kick it to. But one of the things you definitely want to be doing, if you're setting up a practice, you want to talk to a healthcare attorney. You don't want to talk to a general attorney, because you could get kicked to something like that. But, we have law firms we work with in the IV, medical spa, and arena, and they're just like they have national experts in the CPO walls, for example. We actually have a blog coming out on that, I think, in like the next month. But, Anthony, next question.
How would I go about marketing myself?
Yeah, that's a perfect question.
Huge question.
Yeah, I think the best way to market yourself is just to have some high energy. Just with that passion, get on LinkedIn, get on social media, get involved, raise your hand, get involved in an organization that is surrounding your passion. So for me, it's been my involvement with PAs in legal medicine, and I recruited a bunch of great people around me, and using that platform to really scale and talk about sort of what I do and what we do, and that sort of helps, right? It's one other area, and then get on LinkedIn and just generate conversation. If you're interested in like the legal consulting space, educational consulting space, start looking at different programs that do educational consulting as an independent contractor. Start, messaging them on LinkedIn or reaching out to them on Facebook groups. And then the conversation just grows. It will grow holistically. But just raise your game, get involved, volunteer. Because sometimes you have to volunteer and spend some time volunteering to sort of get something out of it. And you'll generate lots of great relationships.
And when you do stuff like that, you curate a little bit more of your attitude and how you think you can actually help. For your question in particular that you mentioned before, I would say parent formation, PTAs, things like that. You have to define your audience and build it through. But one of the things we teach our team in our company is we've been using AI, for example, in our client service platform for 4 years, and we're kind of developing some other features. But one of the things we kind of push within our company is whether it's marketing or client service or our underwriting, it's simply relationships are what are going to make the business grow. It's not about scaling out the minutiae, like Tracy was saying. You don't get paid for minutiae. I mean, some companies do. But I think the purpose is to take like your thoughtfulness and where you want to go and use that thing that's like your secret sauce about you and bring that out there. And the only way you get that is through relationships. Marketing will come with that. Yeah.
I would add one of the things that was really important for me is clarifying your message. So the book Story Brand by Donald Miller, single best marketing book I've ever read on making sure you know who you are and who you serve and what you're selling. Because if you're not clear on that, you're confusing everyone you're talking to about it.
So that's a wonderful book. It's well marketed. you read it.
It really is.
You get a daily intake email. The chapters
You're doing
and
a lot of
quotes
things.
for all of you are like 1 page, and then he does a video where he recaps everything for you,
Super helpful.
which is probably good for Asian education as well. So there's an idea for you. But next,
Decrease liability that way.
decrease your liability that way. Next question.
Oh, I have one.
I have one more thing to add. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
My biggest thing is like you're just gonna get over your fear of social media. And like as somebody who's like recently having to do this, like it is cringy. It's hard to get comfortable posting all the time and engaging with people and putting yourself out there, but that has been like a huge game changer for me at least in terms of just trying to engage with the right people. Like I don't need thousands of clients, I just need a few. And so for me it was really important to kind of get over that fear of putting myself out there and just like social media is free. Like use free marketing. And then the second to Will is like all I do is partnerships. Because to me, I can do ads if I wanted to. I don't want to. I want strong partnerships. I want to build great relationships. That's why we partner with CM&F, because we're not about the transactional relationships, and you're going to get so much more out of those partnerships than out of sort of like being very transactional, doing ads, kind of just doing your normal sales. So those are the two things for me, is like really leaning into like the free aspects. Because like marketing is like very expensive.
Cool. I think we got time for officially 2 more questions.
Maybe more of a comment than a question. First of all, great conversation. I think there should be no dispute that we are in the best space in healthcare. We're in demand. So earlier you mentioned that the fear of starting out is, let's say, the biggest thing you should have in the back of your mind is that you can get employed anywhere at any time, right? Really. I mean, and that should be your fallback. I tell my kids that I'm an ER doc, and I tell my kids that, look, my ER medicine brings me this much salary, everything else, all the other things I do is more, but it's an insurance ticket for me. It's like getting a dental insurance, life insurance, disability insurance, it's the same thing. If all my business fell apart, I can put food on the table and we're in the same position. There should be no fear. really wanting to do something and you have a heart set on it, then you should never have a fear that you're not going to have a job. You will have a job overnight, anywhere you go.
Yeah, that's a perfect concept. Yeah.
So this would be probably to Phoebe and then a split question to everyone else. When I stood up my practice in my med spa, I know that one of the things we had to learn about is MSO, depending on that. So Phoebe, maybe if you could just briefly mention an MSO, because I think there's a lot of confusion out there about what that is. And then the last thing is, if entrepreneur, one of the things that you have to do is you're going to have money. And so if there's anyone out here who already knows about PA funding sources, because there is a big restriction between a PA versus a physician from banks, they will look at you differently, I promise. So if anyone knows about funding, I think that's something really useful for an entrepreneurial person.
Yeah, so as mentioned, corporate practice of medicine is a regulation that is just basically the crux of the regulation is that you need to separate business interest and clinical decision making. And so these rules are really put into place for patient care, for lack of better words. And so a lot of states will say a physician has to own the medical practice so that we can guarantee that there's independent clinical decision making. And it's not going to be a PA-owned practice who's saying, oh, these are the clinical protocols, but really you're overprescribing or you're doing something because you're kind of biased because of money. It does add complexity too when you have a PA who wants to own their own group or medical practice. And so because of that, there are, this is so confusing, but it's called a PCMSO structure. And what an MSO basically is it's a management services organization that many of you would probably engage with. It is all the operations. It's the marketing, it's the billing, it's the HR, it's the credentialing, it's everything outside of the clinical care that's actually being provided and the medical director and the physician. And so in a lot of states, you'll have to enter into these business structures where you as a clinician would actually form the MSO and be responsible for, you basically say, I'm going to handle everything else, but I'm going to contract with this physician, PC, which is professional corporation, and they are going to own the independent clinical decision-making piece. And the most important piece behind, between these two is that arrangement is not based on a percent of income, it's not based on encounters, it's not based on volume, but it's based on a flat fee. So that, again, regulators can ensure that whatever the clinical protocols are that the physician is writing, that people have to follow, is not going to inadvertently benefit them if there's more, if they change price, if they do anything in that regard. So again, a lot of clinicians will go, but I want to own my own practice, and I want to control everything. And in theory, you really are, as an MSO, you really do get to have the majority of the say. The only piece that you don't get to really say is if you want to cut a corner, you don't want to do a lab test because it's going to, cost money or something in that regard. And that's, again, where the physician comes in to really just make sure that it's in the best interest of the patient and that you are, ultimately working within your confines of your scope and that you're not doing anything morally incorrect because you are the business owner.
Yeah, it's a good question, especially on the banking side. I don't have an exact answer for that. If you guys do, I do know even for doctors, there's like an issue with banking in general. There's a company that came out probably 4 or 5 years ago called Panacea Financial, and it's built specifically for physicians, veterinarians, and it's a separate banking resource. And one of the co-founders, actually his wife is a nurse practitioner, and she was joking to him about where do I bank them when I went to open a business. So I don't know if I know they had a strategy, thought process of expanding out to PAs and Ps and nurses and becoming like a resource, because part of what they do is even like helping float when you first start working to kind of keep the financials until you can kind of really hit I'll only do one more for the sake of the panelists.
Do I get the mic?
What? You got the mic, usually. Take power.
So thank you for this, sharing your stories and everything. What are some approaches that you took to raising, so this is along with his question earlier, but raising funds for your business when you're first starting out, because you're probably quit your other job at that point, and don't have any other income, so.
I'll start.
So I'm completely bootstrapped. So I worked at W2 for about, I don't know, as long as I possibly could before my brain was gonna explode. It's about 5 months, and then finally was like, you know what, I'm just gonna, quit. And I actually did consulting, so I was doing a lot of like 1099, which a lot of, clinicians, you all actually have a lot more consulting 1099 options than I have. And so to me, I did not want to get funding. I really wanted to try to do this within like the confines of like my budget. I really did not want to start off in a bunch of debt. Just mainly because in my industry, in the health tech industry, everybody does this VC backed, it's this sort of thing. And I did this because I wanted to be my own boss. If I borrowed money from somebody, I would actually lose that autonomy.
Yeah, similarly, I'm still practicing clinically 3 days a week and have worked my way to the point where the business is funding itself and making income. I would, unless your income is completely elective and you could quit tomorrow and have your business make no money indefinitely, my heart is just scared for the people that are like, I quit tomorrow because I went to an entrepreneurial panel, I have no revenue and no runway, and I'm just hoping the plane is going to take off. It does take time to create systems and generate revenue. The people that are telling you they started a business yesterday and they're making $30,000 this month are lying. It's just not happening. So making sure that you have enough padding. If you're going to quit completely, have a huge, juicy emergency fund where if you don't make money right out of the gate, you're not jeopardizing your own financial stability. We have made money, reinvested, made money, reinvested, made money, finally started paying me eventually. So it's not my experience has not been 6-figure year the first 6 months.
Yeah, the beauty of my work is that I work anywhere I have a laptop. I have really no overhead. It's just me and a virtual assistant that I have in India, and they do a great job and at a very low cost. So for my business, I don't need to get funds. It's not necessary. It's really a business I can do on my own time. It's flexible, and anybody who has been in their trade for 5 to 7 years, you can do it. Like, this is absolutely something you can do. You can opine on cases. So to me, there's very low entry into what I do, and it's really fun work and very flexible work, and you can size up if you want to, or size down depending on how busy you are in life, and then you can move into other entities as well, which is why I do educational consulting as well. So for mine, mine's completely self-funded. There's really not a lot to fund. It's just a computer, it's in software. So.
I have one more thing.
So a lot of the PAs that I work with that are kind of venturing out, they're actually able to do this for around $5,000 to get started. So you're thinking of kind of like startup costs. Now, with the caveat that they are starting virtually, right? They're not building a clinic, they're not doing something brick and mortar. It's a little bit more like I want to go and kind of build my LLC, put myself out there, maybe do some like mental health, type of work. So, it is feasible at kind of like the lower tier, which I think, again, $5,000 is probably not a lot if you're thinking about really jumping in and starting your own business, whereas, there's some other industries that cost a lot more. And then kind of, there's a lot more factors that go into it, of course, if you're thinking about doing something brick and mortar and having kind of like a standalone clinic in the community.
Yeah, good answer on that. Again, I think you start small, you scale out as time goes, and that might be sooner or later based on your time frame and your access to funds and time at the end of the day. But just want to say thank you for everybody coming by. Our booth booth for CM&F Group is at booth 1211, I think we're at. So stop by. I think we have a coffee latte thing going on over there for the next 30 minutes. So if you need one, feel free to pop by. We'll be here for the next couple of days. Thanks so much for everybody coming. Thank you.